Have you ever been in a situation where somebody came to you and said, hey, we've got this environment running over here and everything looks great, but now we need to get that same environment running somewhere else. Maybe this is another data center, disaster recovery location. Well, we can do this in the cloud today with a feature called Azure Blueprints. So here we are in the Azure portal, and I'm pinned over here the policy icon. And inside the policy section, we find blueprints. So blueprints will enable us to deploy multiple environments from a single set of architectures or blueprints. And a blueprint will involve several factors. So let's go and create a blueprint definition. So we'll hit create blueprint at the top here, and we need a name and description. Okay, so we'll just call it text snips, and the description is to deploy standard resources, permissions, and policies required for a new region. And then we'll give it a location. And I will select my management group for this, and the management group will let me deploy this blueprint across multiple subscriptions, and we'll click artifacts. So now we have to add all of the artifacts. Now an artifact is a policy, RBAC permission, resource manager template, or resource group. So let's start with the resource groups. So in the experience here, we'll give it a name, like security as a description, and we'll leave the name here as set value. And that means we'll be able to apply this when we assign the blueprint, and a location, which also we'll leave right now, and we hit add. So now we have 4 different resource groups for our virtual network, central services like domain controllers, file service, etc. A security one for things like firewalls and monitoring, and then one for an application. Now let's click artifacts again, and let's add some permissions. Okay, so we've added a number of permissions now, one for the owner of the whole subscription, and then different ones for the resource groups depending on what that resource group is used for. So our regular contributors and readers for our VNets and for our application, but in the security department we have security contributors and readers, and then for our domain controllers, only the domain controller users will have access to that. So now let's add some artifacts for policies. And we'll choose our initiatives, and we'll use a custom initiative. And this one is for allowed US locations only, so we can restrict where things are deployed in the cloud. And then we'll add another one here for our central services, and this will be another custom initiative to deny certain resource types. And this is where we're going to block public IP addresses from being used on our domain controllers so we don't expose them to the internet. For our last resource type here, let's choose Add Artifact under our VNets, and we'll choose the Azure Resource Manager templates, which is going to need a name and a description to deploy a hub and spoke VNet with peering enabled and a route table so that they can send traffic appropriately. And now here's where we can add our ARM template. So we can either type it in or we can use a existing ARM template, which is what I'll do. And we'll paste this into the ARM templates field. And then this particular template, the way I've written it, requires a single input parameter and it has a default value, and we can see that specified here as well. So we could hard code and change this here or leave it to the assignment time. So let's see what we've got here. So we'll hit Save Draft. And now, in order to make this usable, we will click Publish Blueprint. We'll give it a version number and description, and we'll click Publish. All right, it is now published, and we can click on the ellipse here to assign our blueprint. And we'll select a subscription to assign that to, and a name, this default is fine, and a location, West US is fine with me. And then you can select if you have multiple versions. Now we have to specify some values here for our resource group names and regions, which I will do. Okay, and so now I've named all of our resource groups here with a BP- prefix, just so we can find them easily in the portal. And the locations here are all West US. You don't have to do that all in the same region, but that'll depend on your deployment and your requirements. And then the IP address range, which I have hard coded here, and we could change that if we need to, but that's fine with me. So before we deploy this, I want you to see what our resource groups currently look like. And as you can see, we don't have any resource groups with a prefix of BP-, so everything that we deploy in here will be a result of the blueprint. So let's go back, and now we are ready to click Assign. All right, and that brings us back to the blueprint screen, and we can go to Assign Blueprints to watch this deployment take place. All right, so our assignment has been successful, and we can see all of the values of everything that we had. We see all of our role assignments, policies, resource groups, and resources, including our peerings for our virtual network. So let's look at what this looks like in the portal. So there's our 4 resource groups. So let's look at the domain controllers and the assigned policies. And we can see here that along with the ones that came in from our subscription to deploy to US regions only, we've also got our deny resource types, but that we notice that is missing from the security resource group, since that was only defined at the domain controller level. And then under our virtual network, here we have our networks and our route table, and they are paired together. And we can also look at some of our role assignments. And some things here have been supplied from the subscription level and others from the management group level. So those are all superimposed upon this deployment. The ones that were assigned by the blueprint are these here, assigned at this resource. And then the blueprint also becomes an owner of the subscription so that it can manage these things going forward. So I hope that you have enjoyed this look at the Azure Blueprints feature. Thanks for watching, and you can learn more about Azure and many other topics at TechSnips. Have a good day.